The world had never seen anything quite like what unfolded on May 24th, 2025. The night sky over Zaporizhzhia Oblast lay motionless, eerily silent under the moonless dark. But unseen to the naked eye, a revolution in modern warfare was already underway. Far from the front lines, deep inside a fortified Ukrainian control center, a small team of drone operators sat poised, staring into banks of monitors. Data streams flooded in. Thermal imagery, signal telemetry, and navigation diagnostics. This was not a traditional battlefield. This was a digital kill box engineered with surgical precision. In their crosshairs, a Russian fuel convoy, an 8-car train carrying over 560 tons of diesel. It was a floating artery of Russian logistics, keeping armored columns alive on the battlefield. For Russia, it was a routine delivery. For Ukraine, it was the ultimate high-value target. The strike team had been preparing for days, not just militarily, but technologically, psychologically, and informationally. A network of Ukrainian partisans embedded inside occupied territories had risked everything to feed precise tracking data. The train's refueling schedule, its average cruising speed, and even blind spots in Russian air defense coverage. Then came the engineering marvels, machines that looked like hobbyist toys, but hid a deadly secret. 5 drones, each meticulously prepared for a distinct role. Overhead, 2 heavily modified DJI Mavic 3 drones conducted reconnaissance, their sensors enhanced with thermal cores and AI-assisted targeting software. They hovered in silence, watching, waiting. But the true executioners were the 3 FPV kamikaze drones, small, nimble, and terrifyingly precise. Unlike costly cruise missiles, these were assembled in small workshops using consumer parts upgraded with combat-grade firmware. Each carried a tungsten-lined shaped charge capable of vaporizing hardened steel like butter. As the train entered the designated kill zone at precisely 0243 hours, the first FPV drone launched. The operator watched its live feed through FPV goggles, the train's glowing heat signature growing larger by the second. It was not piloting, it was orchestration. Artificial intelligence had taken over much of the precision work, analyzing visual features, correcting for train velocity, and recalculating the strike vector on the fly. Suddenly, a pulse of electromagnetic interference filled the air. The Russians had activated their Lear-3 electronic warfare system, a lumbering CAM-AZ truck fitted with sophisticated jamming arrays. Broadband noise swept across multiple frequencies, followed by targeted spot jamming aimed squarely at the FPV drone's 2.4 GHz band. Inside a fortified Ukrainian control center, far from the front lines where tanks clashed and artillery roared, an entirely different kind of battle unfolded. Here, there were no trenches, no sandbags, and no camouflage nets. The operators weren't grizzled veterans or seasoned field commanders. Many were engineers barely out of university, programmers who once built apps, and young technicians who had grown up playing video games. Their hands never held rifles, but instead danced across keyboards, touchscreens, and control sticks. Their eyes weren't searching distant horizons for enemy silhouettes. They were locked on data streams, algorithms, and live telemetry feeds. Before them were glowing banks of monitors pulsing with artificial intelligence calculations, drone diagnostics, weather analytics, and high-resolution thermal maps. This was the synthetic battlefield, a domain where code was the new ammunition. Algorithms replaced traditional tactics, and machine learning models served as precision-guided officers. Every signal, every radio frequency shift, and every thermal bloom was data to be harvested, analyzed, and acted upon. The battle wasn't fought on maps, but on screens lit with endless layers of sensor fusion, real-time object recognition, and predictive modeling. It was a world where milliseconds mattered and where victory hinged not on brute force, but on the ability to outthink and outadapt faster than the adversary. In this cold, humming nerve center, these digital warriors weren't just fighting a battle. They were inventing a new kind of war in real time, one where improvise. The operator's screen flickered, connection warnings flashed in red. But this was no surprise. The drone's onboard systems instantly shifted into countermeasure mode, hopping frequencies hundreds of times per second across multiple bands. As jamming increased, the drone switched to L-band backups, while simultaneously initiating optical targeting fallback. Russian operators escalated, deploying GPS spoofing, injecting false positioning signals in a desperate attempt to confuse the drone's navigation. But inside the drone, hardened inertial measurement units, clusters of gyroscopes and accelerometers, detected the discrepancies. The drone abandoned GPS entirely, trusting its own sensors to track velocity, altitude, and heading. At 0244 hours, with the train hurtling at 11 meters per second, the AI-guided drone reached terminal dive. Its onboard algorithms identified not only the fuel tank itself, but precisely where the steel was thinnest, exactly where the shaped charge would do the most damage. The impact was surgical. A molten jet of metal, traveling at 30,000 feet per second, pierced the first tank's wall. Diesel instantly vaporized into a fuel-air cloud and ignited into a towering fireball. The blast wave shattered nearby windows for kilometers. But the real terror came next. Like a chain of dominoes, one fuel car ignited the next. Each explosion amplified the inferno. Within seconds, the entire train, nearly 200 meters long, had become a rolling apocalypse. The second and third drones plunged into the chaos, striking fresh targets, ensuring total destruction. Inside the Russian command post, panic broke out. The Lear 3 crew scrambled to adapt, but conventional jamming doctrines were useless against this hybrid swarm of AI-guided, frequency-hopping, inertially steered drones. The rules of electronic warfare had just been rewritten. By 0245 hours, barely 2 minutes after the first drone launched, the mission was complete. The railway artery was annihilated, Russian armor would soon feel the fuel shortage, and millions of dollars in military assets had been vaporized. The cost to Ukraine? A few modified commercial drones, barely 5,000 in parts. But this was far more than just a successful strike. It was a declaration. The age of billion-dollar defense systems being outwitted by thousands of dollars in consumer hardware had arrived. The world was witnessing the dawn of algorithmic warfare, where AI-driven autonomy, agile civilian innovation, and decentralized intelligence networks converge into an unstoppable force. The drone operators sat in silence, watching the thermal feeds as secondary detonations continued rippling through the inferno. Partisan spotters quietly melted back into the civilian landscape, ready to repeat the process again. The battlefield was no longer limited to tanks and jets. It was now governed by data, precision, and adaptability. As dawn broke, satellite imagery captured the aftermath, a grotesque scar of blackened railway lines and twisted steel. Global intelligence communities pored over the footage, struggling to adapt their old doctrines to this new, terrifying paradigm. This strike had not only decimated Russian logistics, it had exposed a fatal vulnerability in 21st century military thinking. The battlefield had shifted irreversibly. Wars would no longer be won by whoever had the biggest army. Wars would be won by whoever could outthink, out-engineer, and out-adapt their enemy in real time. Between 0243 and 0245 hours, the future of warfare arrived. It came small, cheap, and autonomous and utterly unstoppable.